You skip the gym, you take the elevator instead of the stairs. You circle the parking lot twice looking for a spot closer to the door. You'd rather sit than stand and stand than walk, and you feel a little guilty about all of it. Here's a strange reframe. That exact impulse might be one of the sharpest survival instincts your ancestors ever had, and it may have kept them alive more reliably than bravery ever did. Ecologists have a name for this: optimal foraging theory. It's the idea that animals, including humans, evolved to get the most calories possible for the least amount of energy spent getting them. That's it. That's the whole principle. An animal that burns more energy chasing food than that food actually provides is losing, even if it eventually succeeds. Over enough generations, evolution doesn't reward effort for its own sake. It ruthlessly favors whichever strategy banks the most extra energy at the end of the day, and an organism that instinctively avoids unnecessary movement is often banking more than one that doesn't. This isn't a fringe idea either. It's one of the most widely tested frameworks in behavioral ecology, applied to everything from foraging birds to fishing strategies in predatory fish. It's easy to miss how high the stakes on this used to be. For most of human history, food wasn't guaranteed. A missed hunt, a bad season, or an injury could mean real, immediate hunger, not just an inconvenience. Every single calorie spent moving, climbing, or carrying something was a calorie that had to be earned back later, with no guarantee it would be. In that kind of environment, an instinct that quietly nudges you toward the lowest effort version of any task isn't a character flaw. It's a genuinely intelligent budgeting system, running in the background, protecting a resource that could not be replaced on demand. You can see this principle everywhere once you know to look for it. Lions, apex predators with almost nothing left to fear, spend an estimated 18 to 20 hours a day resting. They're not lazy by accident. Hunting is genuinely dangerous and calorically expensive, so the most successful lions are the ones that conserve energy relentlessly between hunts and spend it explosively only when the odds are good. Compare that to smaller prey animals, constantly alert, constantly moving, burning far more energy just to stay marginally safer. Being able to afford stillness is, in a very real sense, a sign of an animal that's already winning. The reverse case makes the point even clearer. Small prey animals, like rabbits or many rodent species, are almost never seen fully at rest the way a lion is. They're constantly scanning, twitching, shifting position, ready to bolt at the smallest disturbance. That constant vigilance isn't optional for them, and it isn't free either. Researchers studying stress and energy expenditure in prey species have found that this near-constant alertness carries a real metabolic cost, burning meaningful energy just to maintain a state of readiness. Predators, sitting near the top of the food chain with comparatively little to fear, simply don't have to pay that same tax, which is exactly why they can afford to look, by every human standard, spectacularly lazy. Here's where it gets personal. In the 1960s, anthropologist Richard Leigh studied the Kalahari San people of the Kalahari and found something that surprised a lot of people at the time. Adults spent roughly 2 to 3 hours a day on actual subsistence activities, hunting and gathering enough food for the group, with the rest of their waking hours spent resting, socializing, or on other unhurried tasks. Similar patterns have shown up in studies of other hunter-gatherer groups too. This became part of what anthropologist Marshall Solins later called the original affluent society argument, not affluent in possessions, but in something arguably more valuable, unstructured time. This shows up in the physical record too, not just in behavior studies of living groups. Archaeologists who study stone tools have consistently found that ancient toolmakers overwhelmingly used whatever suitable raw material was closest to their camp, rather than traveling further to reach a technically better source. Analysis of stone tool assemblages across numerous prehistoric sites shows the overwhelming majority of raw material was sourced from within just a few kilometers, with the amount of high-quality, imported stone dropping off sharply as the distance required to fetch it increased. In other words, ancient toolmakers weren't chasing the objectively best material available. They were solving for the best material worth the walk, which is optimal foraging logic applied directly to technology, written into the archaeological record itself. This preference doesn't just show up in behavior, it shows up in how the brain is wired to make decisions in the first place. Cognitive scientists describe something called the least effort principle, a well-documented tendency for humans and other animals to instinctively choose the lowest energy option available, all else being equal, even in tiny, almost invisible ways. It's the same impulse behind desire paths, those worn dirt trails you see cutting across a park lawn instead of following the paved sidewalk. Nobody designed those shortcuts. Enough individual brains simply calculated, without any conscious thought at all, that the slightly shorter, slightly easier route was worth taking. So why does this instinct feel like a personal failing today instead of a survival advantage? Because the environment around it has changed dramatically, while the instinct itself hasn't. Calories that once required real, uncertain effort to obtain are now available constantly, cheaply, and with almost no physical cost at all, sometimes arriving at your front door within 30 minutes of a few taps on a screen. The ancient energy conservation instinct is still running exactly as designed, still steering you away from unnecessary movement, except it's now operating inside a world of elevators, food delivery apps, and desk jobs, where that same instinct no longer has scarcity keeping it in balance. You're not fighting laziness. You're fighting a perfectly good ancient system that never got the memo that the environment changed. It's worth being careful not to take this too far, though. This isn't a scientific excuse to skip every workout or ignore genuine physical activity altogether, since regular movement still matters enormously for modern health, especially given how sedentary most contemporary environments already are by default. There's also a real difference between this instinctive energy conservation bias and clinical fatigue, burnout, or depression, which involve very different underlying causes and deserve to be taken seriously rather than reframed away. It's also worth noting that individual differences are real too. Not everyone experiences this pull with the same intensity, and factors like personality, health, and circumstance all shape how strongly it shows up in any one person. The point here isn't that effort is bad. It's that the discomfort you feel resisting unnecessary effort is an old, functional system doing exactly what it evolved to do, not proof that something is wrong with your character. Once you see it this way, a lot of everyday behavior stops looking like weakness and starts looking like an ancient, mostly accurate calculation running on outdated information. The mental tug toward the couch instead of the gym isn't a personal failure to overcome through sheer willpower. It's a very old, very reasonable piece of software asking a very reasonable question. Is this movement actually necessary for survival? In a world of guaranteed meals and heated houses, the honest answer is usually no, which is exactly why the pull to conserve energy still feels just as strong as it would have felt when the answer mattered so much more. Understanding that doesn't make the instinct disappear, but it does change what the daily tug-of-war actually is. It's not a battle against personal weakness. It's a negotiation between a very old, very capable system and an environment it was never designed to operate in. The next time you catch yourself avoiding something that isn't strictly necessary, it might be worth remembering that impulse has a longer, smarter resume than almost anything else about you. It kept a lot of ancestors alive long enough to become your ancestors in the first place. That's exactly the kind of hidden thread this channel exists to dig up. If you want more of these, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.